Welcome back to another VFX tutorial, and this time we're gonna play around a little bit with particles because that's always a fun thing. And today we're gonna do something which you see in Noita. So this is the game in front of you where you have tons of particle systems, but here we will just have, let's say, a bullet which is flying, and then the particle systems are an additional trail or just eye candy, which is just giving the whole look and feel a little bit more polished, and it simply looks nicer if you have something which is glittering or flying behind it. Or for example, you can actually use it as a burst also. So these ones are what we're gonna do. So basically a trail which is linear, then one which is kind of falling off, so basically like magically sparkly stuff which is flying downwards, and then a burst. This is One Up Indie. I am a developer, so if you like what you're seeing, hey, why not consider subscribing, sharing and liking. Alrighty, so this is for example what we're gonna do. So basically, let's say a linear follow-up, which is kind of looking nice, and then it kind of wiggles behind it, which is pretty sweet. This is not as trivial as it seems. Then the next thing, which is then basically the same stuff but with some extra gravity, and then I use a different sprite which is just recoloring from a very lofty lightish color into, well, a darker color, and then it fades out, and of course, boom, kind of a burst which is pretty sweet to be used for, let's say, a shotgun shot or something which is similar, which is just bursting out and you only need it once. This is not then a constantly being spawned. So for example here, these bullets constantly spawn particles, and we don't want that. We just want to have like one instantly, like, but of course you can of course combine, let's say, the burst with a shot like this. So this is the idea behind it. Alrighty, so how does that look like in theory and in practice also? Let's go into our object weapon. Not too difficult to, so there's not many things you need to understand. I already did a video how you can rotate and spawn and blah blah blah, so this shouldn't be new stuff for you. So basically I just press, let's say, the mouse button, left, right, or even the middle, and then I just create an instance. So let's say for example the bullet, then I give it a speed and a direction, and for example for the spell, because well, this is having this nice fireball, then we need to give it a specific angle also. We just pass these things in, and this is basically it. Nothing special, just giving speed, direction and angle, and speed and direction, well, so it can fly, and then the angle so it rotates correctly. Nothing too special in this regard, so we can get rid of that. Let's go into our object bullet, because here we will first of all create an particle system, and then we have an alarm which is looping, and then boom, after it loops, it creates every time the alarm is ticking off a few particles, and then it loops, and then it creates particles, and at some point, well, we destroy it. This is basically the whole theory behind it. So let's get rid of that stuff, and all the other ones are very similar in this regard. So the first thing which is kind of important, we need to create a particle system. I'm not telling you anything new, so if you've seen my other videos, this is old stuff. First of all, we need to create a particle system, then we need to create a particle, so basically a system, then the particle which you want to spawn. I just call all of my trail, you can call them whatever you like. Then, well, the very important thing, after this bullet is done, you need to destroy this particle system which we are storing in this variable. Why is that? Well, let's say for example you have created 20 particle systems in your bullets, and the bullets are gone, and you are in the next room. This stuff is still in memory. Therefore, please always, after you don't use your particle system, get rid of this. Of course, this is a terrible way how to handle it. Normally you would be having a decentralized one particle system, one setup where everything is set up for once, but we do it here the lazy way. So if you are an advanced programmer, don't copy it like this. This is just for demonstration purposes. Boom. Alrighty, so first of all we need to, well, customize our particle. Not too much going on, we just give it a sprite. So part type sprite speed, no sprite, here we go. of course, our trail. And what kind of sprite are we using? Well, for our yellowish fireball, I just give it an ember, basically what is that, 5x5, something with some transparencies, nothing too fancy. So let's copy paste that and import it here, boom. And then what do we need? Just animation. So we just 0, 0, 0, cool. And everything is set up. The next thing which we like to do, give it a specific life, because it needs to be popping up very quickly, and then basically it needs to be gone. So life min max, what did I put in? 35 per 35. Of course, if you want to have it a little bit more random, then give it different kind of numbers, but I think this is good enough. Then the next thing, the alpha value part type alpha, here we go. Let's go between 3 values, which of course is not necessary, but I think it looks nicer if it appears. So let's say we have an alpha of 1, then 1, and then it goes into 0 in the end of its life cycle. So these things are linked together. Then the next thing, well, we need to have a size. This is of course optional. If you like, you don't have to do this. I go between 1 and 3. So we have some variety, and then we are pretty much finished, because there's nothing more to the particle. This is basically it. And now we need to loop our particle system. So therefore we need to start our first alarm. So here we go, alarm 1, not 0, 1. So let's go and give it a value of 5, because I used alarm 0 to destroy the instance. So we create basically 2 alarms. So alarm 0, this one is just basically for destroying the instance at some point, because we don't want the bullet to be flying for all eternity and just spawning and spawning and spawning more particles. You could do this, but nah. Let's go give it, I don't know, 400 or whatever. Of course, there are other conditions which lead to its destruction, but this is just for, well, demonstration purposes. So great. So get rid of this one. Now we need to spawn it apart. Particle, how that said, particles create. Here we go. Then we need, of course, the system, which we are well, using that thing. Then let's go for X and Y, and then, well, what kind of particle we want to spawn. Here we go, the trail, and then number for now just 1. And for example, now we can start it, and here this is already okayish, but it doesn't look too good. So as you can see now, well, it's been spawned once. Now maybe we want to loop it. So therefore we just say alarm set, then 1, because we want to loop in here, and let's give it a value, I don't know, of 5. And here this won't be looking too good in my opinion. Of course, if you want to have it very linear, then this is working for you, but it doesn't have this randomness, I don't know. And as you can see, it is very similar. It doesn't have this nice zigzag thing which it is following to, and therefore we need to adapt it quite a bit. So first of all, we need to adapt it to a new position, and this one will be defined by length here. So if you are not sure about length here, link in description also below. We need to grab 2 different kind of variables. So I just call it xdiff and well, ydiff. So here we go, just import them instantly, and then we say length here x, and then for example we need a length which we want to input. For that I just create another variable, I'd call it length, and then what are we inputting here? Well, as a direction, we can actually say direction, which is taking from the bullet. So this is the thing which it has all the time, so it's flying in a direction, but we don't want to spawn this stuff in the direction. So let's go into a little bit of a drawing. We don't want, for example, in the direction, that would be somewhere here. This is not what we want. We want something to be, well, let's say this is, let's say, the X position of that thing. We want to go back. and a little bit in such a cone. So somewhere here, here, it doesn't really matter, but somewhere after this thing. So it always is kind of relative to the direction this thing is flying to, and then minus 180 with some diversion in here. So how can we do this? Well, kind of easy. We just say minus 180, and of course we can do this for the Y version also. So Y. But now that thing is just basically behind it linear also, but we want to have some diversion in, well, how much we want to have kind of a angle difference. So therefore we just say that no problem, create a variable, call it angle difference, and here you can play around how much do you want. So I just go, let's say from the original position, minus 180. So basically this could be a maximum of 30 degrees, well, 15 upwards and 15 downwards. So basically this is like 30 degrees, and we just add this sucker in here, and of course do that for the other one also. And then we're pretty much finished here in this regard. So let's check it out. As you can see, this is of course looking much nicer, but let's give it a little bit more of a twist, because in the end it is still linear, but it's just a little bit zigzaggy. So first of all, let's go and create two more variables. This is of course optional content for, well, this trail here. We just create two, well, alarm min max values, and we just use those two variables, let's say between 1 and 5. So this is a very short thing, and call var rand loop I don't know. And then we just say I random range between the minimum and the maximum value. This was 1 and 5, and then input that thing as, well, the value which we want our first alarm to loop. So this is the index and this is the count. Now to make it even more fancy, what we can actually do, say like, hey, repeat, and then we say like, hey, we want to have a variable mount, which is irandom. So as you can see, tons of random values, but they give a great look and feel overall. So let's go between let's say 1 and 3, 4, that doesn't really matter. And then, well, use that in the repeat function, and now, and close that of course. So here once again, so we can actually see here, this is the looping part, so the re-looping part, and this is the spawning part. And then we just say like, hey, spawn between 1 to 4, give it the specific length. This will be all the time the same, but of course then the angle difference will be different, and therefore we have a nice little trail behind that. So let's check it out. As you can see, ooh, this is clustering quite a lot, but it doesn't look too bad. As you can see, there is a little space in between. So if you don't want to avoid this, well, make first of all the range smaller, or for example the length of how much do you actually want to divert with length there, a smaller value, but I guess 10 is alright. Let's go between 1 and 2. Whoa. And then we're pretty much finished here. So basically this is the whole spiel here. Nothing too special in my opinion. This is then looking pretty neat actually in my opinion. So yeah. So why not? Alrighty, and of course it will always stay relative depending where we are shooting. So this is pretty neat. Of course, if you want to have it a little bit more let's say dynamic, because let's say you want to rotate your your particle also, what you can actually do is also say like, hey, and just give it a specific spin. So we just say, hey, orientation, boom, and then, well, our particle we want to change. This is, I guess, the last part. This is, once again, this is optional stuff, but I guess the more you customize, the better it will look. And therefore we just say like, all right, so we just input the same stuff as the minimum value, as the maximum value, because this should be all the time the same. Are we increasing it? No, we don't want to spin it. Wiggle, No. And make it relative, no, not also. And now even this particle will rotate now correctly with the input direction. Will it? No, I actually lied. Why did I lie? Because we want to have it in our direction. So let's get rid of all that stuff. And that stuff, we just need the direction because this should be good enough for us. So basically we're just taking the same direction. We could use this one, but then it will be a little bit twisted, and now as you can see, now it is turning around correctly. And of course, as you can see, there is a little issue because this thing is very noisy, so you see tons of overlapping. So depending if this thing is so depending what kind of background you're having, then you of course have to play with alpha values, or what you can actually do is overlap them. So let's go into GameMaker once again. Why I'm jumping like crazy in here, we can actually do part type. Where are you? Blend, what was it? Blend, yes, additive blending. Not sure how that actually will look like, but let's do it anyway. So let's check it out. Yeah, this is way too much. So the blending part is giving some nice glitter, but yeah, not the best idea. So just forget it. Of course, if you want to have this nice ultra glowy effect, then adaptive blending is your friend. So how is the other stuff, well, being built? Basically, it is very similar. So let's go into our object spell, which is basically the same setup. I'm telling you nothing very specific here. We are just having additionally, well, 3 colors. And why did I choose color 1, 2 and 3? Well, because I just said like, hey, let's actually take that stuff from the spell. So basically I'm just color picking this one, and then taking the RGB values, then color picking, I don't know, this one, and then of course then the darkest one as number 3. And this is basically what I did. I just took those values and just set that color 1, color 2, color 3, and boom, you have a particle effect which is similar looking to the spell which you're doing, which is then of course great for you. And then you say gravity, give it a small gravity going downwards, and of course put well, the gravity direction as to 70. All right, so this is basically the same stuff, but just with the gravity pointing downwards. And of course there are not big changes, let's say, in here. So we just have a little bit more which we are spawning. Of course here I'm using 1 pixel well, sprite, which is easier to overcolor, and then we have no problems with overlapping. So here this is the only difference. I'm not using this amber thing, I'm using as a sprite amber white, but it's not really amber, it's just 1 pixel. And then of course this will have a different impact, and then it will look a little bit more smoother, so there's no let's say this glowiness which sometimes can look, well, terrible or pretty bad. And as you can see here, same, we input the orientation, give it some differences, and this is it. And now let's come to the last thing, which is basically the same code. So I'm almost doing the same stuff again for the burst, and here we are just using the same for the orientation. Now we don't want to go minus, we are actually going in the direction where we are shooting, and then we just spread it out nicely. So how does that look like? Well, let's check it out. And here we come to a little pitfall, because I thought like, hey, just create this thing and then instantly destroy it. But if you, for example, create particles and instantly destroy this particle system, so let's say you hit then after, let's say, an alarm of 2 or 3, and then you destroy the particles with it, and then nothing is flying. So therefore, just a little cautionary tale, keep this thing a little bit longer around so it can actually function. Or, well, the ideal thing is have your, well, particle system outside of this realm. And here, what are we doing? Basically, just once again, this is the same as our, well, the spell part. We have a sprite, which is the amber white. Once again, the same thing. An alpha, so going between 1 and 1 and then 0. And then a size between 1 and 2. And then the life is a little bit longer. It's not 35, it's 1 second and 1.5. Something in between, so it appears a little bit more random because a spread is a kind of different beast. Then give it the 3 colors. And of course, we give it now a speed value between 2 and 5, so it can fly faster or slower, and of course reduce a little bit. So here this is speed increase, we go with the minus value, so it kind of stops a little bit. And then what we do in our alarm, well, basically we're just spawning a lot of them, as you can see, between 5 to 35. And here we just say, hey, spawn them and give them a different kind of angle. So the direction which we are flying to is the, let's say, the ideal thing. Then go between 35 and 35 as an angle difference. Add that to the flying thing, and boom, update the direction of each time while we are spawning one particle. This is basically it. So once again, once we started, easy peasy stuff. And of course, if you're a patron, then you will see that as a project to be used and abused. And of course, then you can use it to your advantage, and you can spawn that stuff because particles are pretty cheap. And of course, and this part and this part. Wow. Okay, the clustering is really hard, so here maybe have less or ones without the glow. Hopefully you found this interesting, because that is actually pretty fun stuff and giving your games definitely a cooler look and feel. And well, see you the next time. Have a good one. One up indie.